Hello everyone, welcome back. In today's video, we got another news and rumor video, first one in a while. We got a couple of signings to talk about, some injury updates, some waiver updates. We have a coaching change, we'll get to that. Plus we got some trade rumors involving the Rangers, Sabres, Canucks, and the Avalanche. And we'll do all that coming up right now. Hello everyone, welcome back to another video here at the Intent Hockey Channel. Now before we begin this video, don't forget to like this video and subscribe down below. Thank you all your support. Wouldn't be able to do this without you guys. So if you haven't already, don't forget to subscribe button down below and leave a comment down in the comment section below so something else gets in this video. So before we begin this video, I just wanted to go over a quick channel update. Now it's nothing to do with my actual channel, but I'm sure you guys have noticed in the background I usually put up some flags, sort of give you an idea of which teams we're going to be talking about in each video. Now most of these teams I have are the older teams. Like I don't have any flags from the teams who were made beyond the 1990s. So all the flags that I do have, I got on sale from someone who was throwing them away. So I got a lot of these flags, but they're all retro teams. So I've decided to get a couple of new flags. I ordered these ones just before the holiday break, and they came in just after I finished recording my pre-recorded videos. So at this current point in time, we now also have the Vancouver Canucks as a flag. We also have the Florida Panthers as a flag, and I've also gotten the Ottawa Senators as a flag. So we do have 3 new teams. I have a couple more flags that are being ordered in the not just in future. Should be in the next week or two. I'll show you them when we do have them. But when we're talking about teams like the Senators, the Panthers, or the Canucks, I will now be able to put flags up in the back to just give you guys some more context of what we're talking about in this video. So hopefully we'll get some more flags until I have all 32 teams. Like I said, I still have a list of them that I still don't have, but for a time being, we are getting a little bit closer to having all the flags of all 32 NHL teams. So just want to show you guys that. We'll get back to a regularly scheduled video now. So back to a regularly scheduled video. So in today's video, we have a lot of things to talk about here today. So as usual, we're going to start off by looking at some signings from our past couple of days, a couple of interesting signings from our past few days, 2 lower end signings and 1 massive extension. So we'll get to all those here. First, we saw the Edmonton Oilers give out an ELC, and that was the 2024 5th round pick, Connor Clattenburg. Clattenburg, who's a left winger, like we say, was taken in just this past year's draft. He gets a 3-year ELC with AAV of $855,000 that'll begin at the start of next year. Clattenburg looks like a very fantastic prospect. So far this year, playing on the OHL, has 12 goals and 22 points in 25 games, nearly a point per game, after he had 17 points in 30 games last year. So he's producing a lot better than he did last year. Looks pretty good. The Oilers saw fit to sign him to his ELC. Now Clattenburg was a 5th round pick from this past year, and he's probably still going to be probably 2, 3, maybe even 4 years away from making a run at the NHL. But it's another young prospect that the Oilers have that I think could eventually be a solid, maybe 3rd line forward there for the Oilers. So it's a solid ELC signing for the Oilers to get Clattenburg on his ELC, so that's pretty good. Another ELC we saw was with the Detroit Red Wings. The Red Wings signed 3rd round pick from this past year's draft, the 2024 draft, Andre Beecher. Beecher gets a 3-year ELC with AAV of $865,000 that'll begin at the start of next year. Now Beecher last year played in the WHL, putting up 32 goals and 96 points in 58 games. I think he was a little bit of an overager, was taken by Detroit like we said in the 3rd round, so he's been playing in the AHL so far this year, has 1 goal and 4 points in 20 games with the Red Wings. So Red Wings have liked his production last year at the WHL by drafting him, and so far this year in the AHL, so they saw fit to give him an ELC. Not too surprised there. Beecher looks like he'll eventually be a solid 3rd, 4th line center there for the Red Wings. Probably still going to be a year or 2 before he's able to get into NHL action, but still it's another nice ELC that the Red Wings have given. So the Red Wings and Oilers have both given out a couple of ELCs. And then we also saw a massive contract extension in Colorado. We talked about this just before the holiday break about how the Avalanche acquired Mackenzie Blackwood in a pretty big deal that sent Alex Georgiev and some draft picks to the Sharks. Well, there was some talk with the Avalanche maybe trying to consider an extension, and they actually have given him his extension. Blackwood was in the final year of a 2-year deal with AAV of $2.35 million that he signed with the Sharks, has been given a 5-year extension with AAV of $5.25 million. So that's a pretty good pickup there for the Avalanche. Is Blackwood worth this? Given how well he's played in San Jose, I think he'd be worth a $5.25 million AAV. Given what he's done in New Jersey, I would say no. So it really depends on what sort of Blackwood the Avalanche are getting. Are they getting the superb high-level goaltender that he's been with the Sharks, or are they getting the subpar goaltender that he was with the New Jersey Devils? It's going to be really interesting to see. So far this year, in 7 games with the Colorado Avalanche, already has a .932 save percentage and 1.93 GAA after having a .911 save percentage and a 3 GAA in 19 games with the Sharks this year, after he had an .899 save percentage and 3.45 GAA in 44 games with San Jose last year. But you must remember, last year the Sharks were an awful team, so to have anywhere close to a .900 save percentage San Jose last year is a miracle. So all in all, that's a pretty good pickup there for the Avalanche. I think Blackwood's going to be a very fantastic fit there in Colorado to be their starter. Now, I think it's 5 years, maybe a little bit too much term. It's possible. Maybe a 3 or 4 year term at maybe between $4.5 and $5 million would have been better for Blackwood, but he's definitely proven himself in San Jose last year and so far this year in Colorado. So the Avalanche saw fit to sign him to an extension, and they have. So the Avalanche have their starting level goaltenders signed up for the next couple of years. So all in all, it's a pretty good signings from our past couple of days since we last did our trade rumor video, as the Red Wings have given Beecher an ELC, the Oilers have given Clanberg an ELC, and Blackwood's given an extension by the Avalanche. Interesting note there. Next, we'll go to a couple of injury updates. We have a lot of injury updates here to get to. So first, the Columbus Blue Jackets have activated Jordan Dumais off a season-opening injury reserve after he missed the entire first part of the season with a lower abdominal injury, and he was sent back down to the AHL. So it's a good news there for the Jackets to get one of their top prospects back in the AHL. Carolina's Shane Gostisbehere missed Saturday's game with upper body injury and is expected to be out longer term. So it's a bad blow there for the Hurricanes to lose a solid top 4 offensive defenseman for the foreseeable future, while Drury was placed on injury reserve. Now, he had hand surgery a little while ago, so I don't think it's too surprising he was placed in injury reserve, and he's still going to miss the next little bit. So interesting note there. Oliver Kylington, who has missed 4 weeks now with upper body injury, has been placed in injury reserve and is now scheduled to be out month to month. So that's a horrible blow there for the Red Wings to see Kylington be out for the next little while. Well, Jonathan Drouin was activated for injury reserve and got back into game action on Tuesday after missing 16 games with upper body injury, and Ivan was placed in injury reserve and may miss time with upper body injury. So good to see Drouin get back. It's a big boost there for the Avalanche. But bad news to see Kylington and Ivan be placed in injury reserve. Ottawa's Anton Forsberg may return on Thursday from his minor ailment that's kept him out the last couple of weeks, so that could be a really good boost there for the Senators to get Anton Forsberg back, especially with Allmark still being injured. San Jose's Vitek Vanacek has a fractured cheek and is out week to week, so it's a bad blow there for the Sharks. He's already missed, I think, a week and a half, so he's probably going to be out for another couple of weeks. Probably won't be back until mid to late January, so bad stuff there for the Sharks. Well, William Eklund was placed in injury reserve with upper body injury and may miss time, so that's a bad blow there for the Sharks as they lose one of their exciting young forwards to injury. When it comes to Tampa, Michael Eisman returned to game action after he missed 1 game with a lower body injury, so that's really great news there for the Bolts. Well, Jake Gensel is out day to day with upper body injury and will miss at least some time, but at least he's been back to practicing in a non-contact jersey, so that's great news to see him back to being practicing, but still, he's probably going to miss a little bit of time, so that's bad news there. When it comes to the Minnesota Wild, Eriksson Ek was activated off of injury reserve and returned to game action after missing time with a lower body injury, so that's really great news there for the Wild. Eriksson Ek's missed, I think, a couple of weeks now, so to see him get back into game action is pretty good. Kirill Kaprizov was placed in injury reserve after missing 3 games with a lower body injury, so to lose their star forward is awful news there for the Wild, and hopefully Kaprizov returns in not too distant future. Well, Jared Spurgeon left Tuesday's game with a leg injury. He was slew-footed by Zachary Leroux, and he may miss some time, so that's a horrible blow there for the Wild as they lose a top 4 defenseman, Spurgeon. Washington's Lars Eller was activated off of injury reserve and returned to game action after he missed 4 games with an illness, so Eller's not an overly important piece, but he's a solid third-line center, so to see him get back is pretty good, while Martin Ferravari is out day-to-day after taking a stick to the face, so hopefully Ferravari won't miss too much time, but he is going to be out for at least a little bit. St. Louis's Alex Texier returned to game action during the Winter Classic after he missed 1 game with an illness, while Radek Faksa missed his 3rd straight game over on Sunday due to a lower body injury. So it's a bad blow there for the Blues to still have Faksa out, but to see Texier get back in the top 9 is pretty good. Utah's Robert Bortuzzo was placed in injury reserve, but is nearing a return after he's missed a few weeks with a lower body injury, so to get some more defensive depth back in the not too distant future could be a big boost there for Utah, while Connor Ingram was sent to the AHL on a conditioning stint, so hopefully Ingram won't miss too much more time. He's already missed, I think, close to a month with his injury, so that's a bad blow there for Utah, but to see him go down on the AHL on a conditioning stint could be a really big boost there for Utah. Alec Martinez is now only day-to-day and should return to game action soon as he continues to recover from his injury, so Martinez has been out for a couple of weeks now, so to see him be upgraded to day-to-day and nearing a return is very good news there for the Hawks. Well, Craig Smith was activated off of injury reserve in time for the Winter Classic and got back into game action after missing 8 games with a back injury, so really big boost there to the Hawks bottom 6 to get a solid hard-hitting forward in Craig Smith back. Anaheim's Brock McGinn was placed on injury reserve with a lower body injury and will be out for some time, so this might be another long stint on the injury reserve shelf for McGinn. He's already been on there earlier this year, so it's a bad blow there for the Ducks and McGinn. Letang missed Saturday's game with a lower body injury and is out day-to-day and was placed in injury reserve, so that's a bad blow there for the Penguins to lose their top defender for at least the next handful of games, while Marcus Pettersson was activated off of injury reserve and returned to game action action after missing a few weeks with a lower body injury. So that's one of their key trade chips for this upcoming trade deadline. So it's good to see Pettersson get back in game action for the Penguins. For Vancouver, they were dealt a horrible blow over on Saturday. Elias Pettersson will miss at least a week with an injury that he's suffering with. Well, Quinn Hughes is dealing with an undisclosed injury and will be out week to week. So the Canucks have lost their top line center and their top defenseman for at least next week, if not longer than that. So that's a horrible blow for the Canucks to lose their two young stars to injuries. So bad stuff there for the Canucks. Hayden Fleury was placed in injury reserve as he continues to deal with a lower body injury. So it's a bad blow there for the Jets to lose a solid depth defenseman. Well, Mason Appleton is out week to week with lower body injury. So that's a horrible blow there. Appleton's a key piece of that Jet third line. So to see him be out for any sort of amount of time is awful news there for Winnipeg. Austin Matthews was placed in injury reserve with an upper body injury, but could return later this week. It doesn't sound like it's overly likely, but it's a possibility. So we'll have to wait and see on if Matthews could return at some point. Oliver Ekman-Larsson should return on Thursday after he missed the game with an illness. So good to see Oliver Ekman-Larsson probably get back for the Leafs over on Thursday. Jani Hakanpää was placed on long-term injury reserve as he's missed 16 games with a knee injury. So it's quite likely that Hakanpää will probably miss some more extended time. So bad news there for the Maple Leafs. Dallas's Matt Dumba was active off injury reserve and returned after missing 8 games with a lower body injury. So that's really good news there for the Stars. You see Dumba get back off of injury reserve after he missed 8 games with his injury. Igor Shesterkin was placed in injury reserve and will miss at least a week with upper body injury. So it's a horrible blow there for the Rangers. Shesterkin's been the backbone of that team, so to see him go down was really bad. New York Islanders Simone Holmstrom suffered an upper body injury and is out day-to-day and missed Tuesday's game action. So it's a horrible blow there for the Islanders as they lose a young player in Simone Holmstrom. Adam Wilsby missed Tuesday's game with an upper body injury in his day-to-day. So Wilsby's not an overly important piece for the Predators, but to lose a depth defenseman is not overly great. Los Angeles' Drew Doughty has started skating and may return. He's missed the entire season so far with a preseason injury. So hopefully Doughty could be back to the Kings in the not distant future. That could be a massive boost there for the Los Angeles Kings. And Sam Ersson is out day-to-day with a lower body injury after leaving their last game. So it's a horrible blow there for the Flyers to see Ersson be out, and hopefully he won't miss too much time. But that's an interesting injury update there from the Philadelphia Flyers. So definitely some interesting injury updates from the past couple of days. Good to see guys like Pettersson, Texier, Eriksson Ek, and Drouin all return from their injuries and get back in the game action. But bad news to see guys like Gostisbehere, Eklund, Pettersson, Letang all be out with injuries, and hopefully they're not going to be out for an overly long period of time and they recover in the not distant future. But some interesting injury updates from our past couple of days. Going over to a quick waiver update from our past few days. So back over last Saturday, we saw Keaton Primeau be placed on waivers for the purpose of demotion for the Montreal Canadiens. Primeau has not been working out overly well. They wanted to give Jacob Dobes a chance at the NHL level, so they placed Primeau on waivers to be sent down, while Daniel Torgersson, who was a prospect in Winnipeg, who was placed on unconditional waivers for the purpose of contract termination. So another person who was placed on contract termination. So Torgersson was a third-round pick a couple of years back. Didn't seem like he was getting an overly great chance with the Winnipeg Jets. Jets, I guess, didn't see a very good fit long-term with Torgersson, so they placed him on unconditional waivers for a purpose of contract termination. Now, usually when players are placed on waivers, they usually wind up clearing. This is indeed what happened with Torgersson. He cleared, so interesting note there. Well, for Primeau, I thought there might have been a team or two out there who could use like a solid backup goaltender who may take a chance on Primeau, especially some teams who are dealing with goalie injuries right now. But no one wound up claiming him. Primeau wound up clearing, so it's an interesting note there. And Primeau's been sent to the minors, so we'll have to wait and see on how Primeau does at the AHL level. But Dobes is going to get a run at the AHL level for the time being. When it comes to the Pittsburgh Penguins, we have Jesse Puljujarvi be placed on waivers a couple of days later. Puljujarvi's been a decent bomb 6-4 for the Penguins, but sort of fallen out over past a little while, been a healthy scratch a couple of times, so the Penguins saw fit to waive him. Now with his contract, I thought there might have been a team or two out there who needs some bomb 6 help, especially teams who are dealing with some injuries, who could have taken a run at Puljujarvi and try to claim him off of waivers. But that didn't happen. Puljujarvi did indeed clear, so Puljujarvi was sent down to the minors. There's a very good chance Puljujarvi could potentially get traded by the NHL trade deadline, so we're going to have to wait and see on that. But Puljujarvi has indeed wind up clearing for the Pittsburgh Penguins, so interesting note there. Those are the only waiver updates in our past couple of days. So Puljujarvi and Primeau were placed on waivers and both cleared, so they were sent down to the minors. Well, Torgersson was placed on unconditional waivers for purpose of contract termination. He cleared, so he's now UFA and he can sign wherever he wants. So interesting note there. But those are all the waiver updates from the past couple of days. Next, going over to a coaching change that happened in Detroit. We saw Boston, St. Louis, Chicago all make coaching moves. It was some interesting to see Luke Richardson be fired. It was interesting to see Montgomery be fired by Boston, and then shortly thereafter be hired by St. Louis. So we've already seen a couple of head coaching moves earlier in the year. Well, we've seen another head coaching move over the holiday break. break, I think it was over on Boxing Day, we got word that the Detroit Red Wings have fired head coach Lalonde. Lalonde was entering the final year of his deal. So it's interesting to see the Red Wings don't usually fire head coaches in season, but they did this time. So Lalonde was out, and they hired Todd McLellan as head coach of the Detroit Red Wings. So Lalonde had been head coach since the 2022-2023 season. He was hired just before that season started. He's had 2 full seasons, and then this year so far as the head coach of the Detroit Red Wings. His first year had a losing record of a 35-37-10 record. Last year nearly got that team to the playoffs with a 41-32-9 record, and up to that point before he was fired this year, he had the Red Wings at a 13-17-4 record. So his complete record was 89 wins, 86 losses, and 23 OT losses. The Red Wings were nearly 500 under him, but they were not going anywhere fast this year, and the Red Wings really do want to try and make it back to the playoffs. So they wound up making a coaching change. So interesting note there. So Lalonde spent 2.5 years in Detroit, and now we have Todd McLellan as the new coach in Detroit. Now McLellan has a ton of history as being a head coach. He spent 7 years a while ago head coaching over in San Jose. Then he was a head coach in Edmonton for 4 years. Then he was a head coach in LA for 5 years. He's basically been a head coach each and every year over the past handful of seasons. Now he's getting his second opportunity. He was fired midway through last year by the Los Angeles Kings. So it was interesting to note there was a very likely chance McLellan was going to get one of those head coaching jobs in the offseason, but he never did. So him going to Detroit's not overly surprising. McLellan has a lot of head coaching experience and is a very good veteran coach who I think could really help this Red Wings team grow. He already has the Red Wings have 3 wins in his 4 games as head coach, so really good stuff there for the Red Wings to have their head coach be Todd McLellan. I think that could be a really good pickup there for the Red Wings. So all in all, interesting coaching move as Todd McLellan is now the new head coach of Detroit, and Derek Lalonde has been fired. So I'd love to hear your guys' thoughts. Do you think this was a right move by the Red Wings, or do you think it was a move that they shouldn't have done? So I'd love to hear your guys' thoughts on that. Lastly here, going over to a couple of trade rumors. Now we're going to start over here with the Buffalo Sabres. We have a couple of interesting updates when it comes to Buffalo. So first, we're going to talk about the Buffalo Sabres and the Detroit Red Wings. We were talking about this just before the holiday break, about how one of Buffalo's major scouts was going to a Detroit Red Wings game. Well, coming out of the holiday break, Elliotte Friedman has reported that they are still scouting each other. Buffalo has sent scouts to Detroit games recently, and Detroit has sent scouts to Buffalo games recently. Now, still not exactly sure what sort of a deal they could be talking about, but it definitely seems that they're scouting each other very hard. I know that both these teams have not had overly great starts. I think these two are the last 2 teams in the Atlantic Division right now, but they're 2 teams who really want to make it back to the playoffs. So, do we see a move happen at some point? It's quite possible. We know the Red Wings are looking to try and boost their blue line, maybe try and get a top 6 forward, try and improve that team a little bit more. We know the Sabres are looking for a veteran top 6 scorer who can really help boost that forward group a little bit. So, it'll be interesting to see if these 2 teams continue to talk. It doesn't sound like there's anything imminent at this point, but they're still sending scouts to each other's teams, so it definitely seems that there's a very likely chance we could see something happen at some point between Buffalo and Detroit, so we have to wait and see on that. Well, staying with the Sabres, Sam Carchidi of the Hockey News believes that the Philadelphia Flyers should go out and target Dylan Cozens. Now, I know Cozens has been a name who's been heavily in the rumor mill over the past while, especially when the Sabres were on that 13-game losing streak of theirs. They've since ended it, so they're nothing really overly substantial for the Sabres right now, but they're still, I think, 6 games below 500 and a very likely chance that they're going to be sellers again at this year's trade deadline. Now, exactly how big of sellers, it's still yet to see, but Cozens is a name who seems to be still coming up. Now, I know that the Flyers don't have the deepest of center depth. They have Sean Couturier as he's aging though, and then they also have Frost, who's in the final year of his deal, very likely trade chip, and Scott Laughton, who's I think got this year plus next year left on his deal, another very likely trade chip. So the Flyers don't really have a whole bunch of really good center prospects, at least in their system, and they traded Couturier away last year, so they could definitely use a solid top 6 center who could work as like their second or first line center. So them going after Cozens makes some sense. Now, like I said, I don't know if they'll try and do it right now because they're a team who's still in the bubble making the playoffs. I don't think they want to give up their first round pick, which is something I think that's part of a package Buffalo would really want. So we're going to have to wait and see what happens there, but I think the Flyers had the assets to sort of make a Cozens move. I just don't know if it's the sort of right move that the Flyers need right now. I think they should be looking at trying to be sellers instead of adding a solid young player in Cozens. And like I said, adding him would be good, but I'm just not sure if they want to give up the assets that would be required to making that sort of a move. So we're going to have to wait and see on that, but it still sounds like the Sabres and Red Wings are scouting each other. Very likely chance they could see some sort of move in not just in the future. Well, Sam Carchidi definitely thinks that there's a very likely chance the Flyers players will try and acquire Buffalo Sabres forward Dylan Cozens. So we're going to have to wait and see on that. But some interesting trade rumors when it comes to Buffalo. Going over to New York Rangers. Now when it comes to the Rangers, there's been some more talk about what potentially could happen for New York. There's one, Elliotte Friedman was talking about the Rangers and said that there's one player on the Rangers that if he was made available, teams will be crawling over each other to try and acquire, and that's Vincent Trocheck. Trocheck, I think, has this year plus I think 5 or 6 more years left on his deal. I think between $5 and $6 million. He's worked out fantastically as a first, second line center for the Rangers, playing with Panarin, putting up some extremely good numbers, and he's still a solid two-way guy too. So Trocheck could be a really good fit there for a ton of NHL teams. So if Trocheck was made available, the Rangers could get a substantial return. But he has also been, like we said, a really good player with Panarin. So not exactly sure if the Rangers will even consider moving Trocheck, given how good of a player he's been for the Rangers. But if he was made available, Elliotte Friedman thinks there would be a ton of teams interested, and they could get a massive return for him. So we're going to have to wait and see on if Trocheck does want it being moved. When it comes to Zibanejad, his name started picked up over the past little while. Zibanejad's a solid first-line center. I think has this year plus 4 or 5 more seasons left at an $8.5 million cap hit. Hasn't worked out overly well as a top-line center there in New York this year. So there's been a couple of people who have said that maybe Zibanejad could get moved. And there's been a couple of people who have linked Zibanejad to the Toronto Maple Leafs. Now the Leafs are definitely in the market for a center. We know they're looking for a center with some term who could be a solid second, third line center. There's been some talk about maybe some guys on shorter term deals like a Brock Nelson or a Mikael Granlund. But Zibanejad's an interesting one. I'm not sure if they'd have the cap space to pull it off, given the fact Zibanejad has an $8.5 million cap hit. And I'm not exactly sure how much the Rangers would be willing to retain on him. But I do think there's a very likely chance we could see at least some interest in Zibanejad. Like, he's a solid first, second line center. He could really help be a 1-2 punch down the middle with Austin Matthews. Like I said, I'm not exactly sure how they work with that cap-wise, given their cap situation. But that could be a really good pickup there for the Leafs. So I know there's been a couple of people who have said that maybe the Leafs should try and target Zibanejad. And like I said, with the cap hit, I don't think they'll go after him, but it is an interesting concept to have a 1-2 punch down the middle of Zibanejad Matthews. So it'll be interesting to see, but it definitely seems like Zibanejad's picking up some steam a little bit. Trocheck will be a hot name if he is available. We also know we've heard some other names be linked, such as Kreider's on the trade block, Keandre Miller's on the trade block. So we're going to have to wait and see what happens there, but the Rangers are definitely going to be an interesting team to watch out for the next couple of weeks, leading into the next couple of months leading up to the trade deadline, as they have a lot of potential irons in the fire right now. So we're going to have to wait and see on that. When it comes to the Colorado Avalanche, there's been some talk recently from Frank Seravalli talking about the Mikko Rantanen situation. Now Rantanen's entering the final year of his deal. He's a very fantastic forward there for the Avalanche. He's one of the big three. They have Rantanen, they have McKinnon, and they have McCarr. Those are the 3 premier players for the Avalanche. But according to Frank Seravalli, the Avalanche and Rantanen are sort of having contract disputes right now. Now, according to Seravalli, he says that the Avalanche have a firm cap ceiling of Nathan McKinnon's $12.6 million. So they don't want to pay Rantanen any more than McKinnon's $12.6 that he has. But Rantanen, who has the same agent as Leon Draisaitl, saw Draisaitl get the $14 million contract from Edmonton and is sort of thinking, why can't he get $14 million? So it's sort of like a contract this year. Now the Avalanche want to pay Rantanen somewhere between like 12, 12.5, and Rantanen probably wants to get somewhere between 13.5 and 14. So I'm not exactly sure which one of those sides will budge. Seravalli does wonder if there's a possibility Avalanche could try and move Rantanen. On one side, it's sort of not realistic because the Avalanche have McKinnon, they have McCarr, Rantanen's a big piece of that team, and they look like they're going to the playoffs. But on the other side of it, you don't want to let Rantanen walk for nothing at the UFA. So it's going to be interesting in this situation to watch out for the next little while. I do think Rantanen will probably get extended, but if he doesn't, he could be a fantastically huge name on the free agent market for a lot of different teams. So we're going to have to wait and see what happens there, but I think Rantanen could push $14 million on the open market if he was to become available. So we're gonna have to wait and see on that. But according to Frank Seravalli, he says that the Avalanche are having contract disputes with Rantanen and that Rantanen wants close to $14 million while the Avalanche want to keep him under McKinnon's $12.6. So we're gonna have to wait and see what happens there, but there's a very likely chance we could get some interesting updates when it comes to the Avalanche. And lastly, going over to the Vancouver Canucks, when it comes to the Canucks, there's been some more interesting speculation when it comes to Elias Pettersson and JT Miller. I'm not going to get into the whole Pettersson-Miller saga and stuff like that, but basically the point is, it doesn't seem like those two are working well together. It's very likely the reason why JT Miller took that personal leave of absence for I think 5 or 10 games in the middle of the season, and it seems like it's sort of turning the Canucks into a sour streak. Like, I think they had lost like 5 or 6 going into tonight's game against the Kraken, so there's a very likely chance that the Canucks we'll have to wait and see, but there's a very likely chance the Canucks maybe have to trade one of JT Miller or Elias Pettersson. We recently saw Patrick Allvin do an interview with Ian McIntyre of Sportsnet, and he had a perfect opportunity to say that he wasn't going to trade Pettersson. Basically basically, Alvin on that interview said that Pettersson needs to mature and grow up, and when he was asked if it was a possibility that he could get traded, he said it is a possibility, and anything is a possibility, he said, but he didn't really say that it's a hard no, Pettersson wouldn't get moved. And then I think earlier in the morning today, we heard Elliotte Friedman talk about Elias Pettersson and JT Miller, and he says that the Canucks are actively listening on offers for both JT Miller and Elias Pettersson. There's a possibility out there could see a Canucks wind up moving one of Pettersson or Miller. So personally, I think if Pettersson and Miller could work things out, that keeping both of them would be huge. Like they're a solid 1-2 punch down the middle. So keeping them, I think, would be huge. But if they had to move one of them, there's a very likely possibility we could see that. They would have to get like a top 4 defensive upgrade, probably a young player back in return. And there's a lot of speculation out there that with Pettersson's no movement clause not kicking in until next year, there's a possibility out there Pettersson could be the one to get dealt. So we're going to have to wait and see on that. But definitely seems like Pettersson and Miller are still not overly fond of each other, and it's sort of bleeding into the team's performance. And with that in mind, it's a very likely chance that we could see Miller or Pettersson get moved at some point before the trade deadline. So we're going to have to wait and see on that. But that's all I want to talk about in this video. I'd love to hear your thoughts on all this down in the comment section below. I'd love to hear your guys' opinion on all that we discussed here today. Do you think the Canucks will trade one of Miller or Pettersson? And if so, which one do you think it is? Do you think that the Avalanche will move Mikko Rantanen, or do they sign him? Or if they don't sign him, could he walk as a UFA? I'd definitely love to hear your thoughts on that. Do the Rangers move Zibanejad? Is Toronto a possible landing spot? Could they deal Vincent Trocheck? Could they deal Kreider? Could they deal Miller? Definitely love to hear your thoughts on all of that. Plus, what do you think about Buffalo? Could they deal Cozens to Philly? Could Philly be a landing spot for Dylan Cozens? And what sort of a deal do you think Buffalo and Detroit could be discussing? Definitely love to hear your thoughts on all of that. Plus, the Red Wings coaching change, the waiver updates, the injury updates, and the signings. Definitely love to hear your thoughts on all of that down in the comment section below. So I'm going to talk for today or into the latest video. If you're listening, subscribe below. Thank you for your support. Know to love you guys. So if you haven't already, don't forget the subscribe button down below. Don't forget to comment down in the comment section below. Something else listening to this video. Also a blog, to news, rumors, analysis. If that's, check that out. The link down in the description below. And I can't see you guys all for next video. See you guys soon.